Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, good evening from here in London. It's 6 o'clock in the evening right now. Nice to meet you.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello, JC.
Ms. Patel, we can start.
Amazing. Thank you. So good afternoon to you guys. Good evening from here in London. My name is Shamim Patel. So a bit of background about me. I'm currently a class teacher and English leader here in a school in London. I work in an inner city school where we have, in my class currently, I have about 40% special educational needs children that I teach. And English is what I would say my specialism and my passion. And it's great to be able to share good practice. I have been to the Oxford School a couple of times when I visited Panama, and I truly love it when I'm there. So I hope you will find this session really, really useful. So today, a little overview on our session. We're going to start off with thinking about why children need to become readers. A little background about phonics, what it is, being able to read pure sounds, practicing what it is that we know, and then we're going to finish off with a few reading strategies. So when we think about the reading, I want us to think about the reading brain. So our brain has to change radically for it to become a reading brain. When learning how to read, each brain has to start from scratch. So we need to build new circuits one by one. We get the wiring wrong and the brain short circuit, and we hinder children's reading progress. It takes some children longer to learn to read than others. Some may need more practice, some may need more adult support. But when we think about reading as adults, reading has now become so automatic to us and effortless that we forget how we acquired this remarkable skill. If we think, how is it that we learned how to read? I think as adults, it's just something that we can do. It's just a skill that we've now acquired. And we're not conscious of the huge amounts of processing our brain does unless something happens to draw our attention to it. So a good example of this is when we as adults read a book. We may turn 2 pages instead of going directly onto the next page. And it's only once we read maybe the end of part of that sentence, and then we go on to read the top line of the next page, and we're like, hang on, that doesn't make sense yet. And I want to tell you a little bit about, so there's a neuroscientist and reading specialist called Marianne Wolf, and her quote, reading transforms the human brain, which transforms the mind, which transforms the life of every reader, is something, is a quote that I find quite inspirational. And it's actually this quote that helps me, as a teacher and as an educator, really think about why reading is so important. It is human nature to love doing things that we are good at, and reading is a life skill. And for some learners, reading is something that they might feel that they're not good at. So it's us as adults that need to share that passion and know exactly which strategies to use to empower children to become great readers. And if we want all of our children to be fluent, comprehending readers, then as teachers, we need to love teaching reading. And it's the passion that we have when we teach. And if we're able to foster that within our children, that's what's going to help children progress. And the importance of reading for pleasure, we as teachers must love reading stories aloud to children. And every day in my own classroom, I teach a year 2 class currently. The school day in London finishes at 3:30. I have a set time of 3:10 to 3:25. It's my time to read to my class, and I deliberately share stories that I loved as a child, and that really helps build reading culture within the classroom. So now I'm going to move on to phonics. So phonics is the code that allows us to read and write words. It's how all alphabetic systems work. So here, that first row, you've got each squiggle. Each squiggle here represents a sound. So the first squiggle is a, s, d, and t. So you've got M-A-S-D-T. Then the second row, we read the sounds together. So we say the sounds together, to read the word. So we've got s, a, t. And then we write the squiggles down to spell the word. But one of the biggest problems of the English alphabetic code is that there are too many squiggles for each sound. English has 44 speech sounds written with 150 spellings and only 26 letters to write them. So, in addition to that, many sounds has more than one way to write them. So, outlined in red, we've got the A sound, which is obviously A-Y, so a word, play. Then there's also the A-E, A split digraph E sound, which will be used to spell words like make, cake. Then in addition to that, children are expected to learn the AI sound, which they would use to spell words like train and snail. So many sounds have more than one way to write them. When we compare the English language to other languages like Spanish, which obviously is the language that is used back in Panama, it's a simpler code. And because of that, Spanish children tend to read more quickly and earlier compared to children that are learning English. And that's why you might find that when you are teaching children how to read in Panama, and I find it here when I've taught in grade 1 classes, sometimes it takes children a very long time to grasp how to read in English. So moving English have the odds stacked against them. And that is the reason why we can't leave anything to chance. We know that children are expected to learn a lot to just to know how to read. We need to teach simple alphabetic code first, as if English was Spanish. So we start with, it doesn't matter which synthetic phonics program you use, you will always find that you're teaching the individual sounds first. So first we teach each grapheme to represent each of the 44 sounds. Then we teach children another way to read each sound, and then another until they can read all the most common words in English. And depending on what phonics schemes and what reading schemes you use, you will find that there's always corresponding phonic charts. So whatever synthetic phonics program you use, it's always good to see the order in which the sounds are taught. And you would find that it is the individual sounds that are taught first before the digraphs and the trigraphs. So now I'm going to move on to pure sounds. So in a way to make them easy to blend into a word. And we aim to eliminate the or what we call here in London, the schwa sound. So if we had the word cat, it's k-a-t. And when I said we want to try to eliminate the sound, so it's not k-a-t. So you can hear that there's a sound at the end. So by doing that, we're making it harder. It is harder to blend. So it's easier with stretchy sounds on the top row, and I'll model that for you. So we've got the top row where here we call it stretchy sound. So and I really want you to pay attention to I'm exaggerating it with my mouth, and that's so then children understand how they must pronounce the sound. So So, but with the second row, these are bouncy sounds, and sometimes it's harder to take up the sound. So we really need to try really hard to not. So with the b, it's b, 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 they're bouncy. So it's not k, it's k, k, d, g, h. So it's making sure it's short and it's bouncy. And then what we must do is here, what we find is, and what I've always done when I've taught phonics to younger children, is I teach the letter names once the children are confident with reading the sound. So obviously, if we take the letter G, when we say the letter name, it's a J sound. But obviously the sound is G. So we want the children to help them read. If we say the sounds first, and we teach the sounds, and once we know children are confident with reading and saying the sound, we can then teach them the letter names. And that really helps children learning to read sounds a lot more quickly. And now what we are going to move on to is I've named this next part, we can practice what we know. And I'm going to use an analogy of children learning how to play the recorder for the first time. So when children learn to play recorders for the first time, they are taught the G, A, and B note. Just by learning those 3 notes, they can play the song or songs containing just those notes that they've learned. And they've practiced a simple tune multiple times, and they get so much joy and pleasure out of being able to play. And we've just 3 more notes, the top D, the lower D, and the C, which is a second image over here. They are ready to play another song called London's Burning. And they've been able to practice that multiple times. So beginning recorder students are only ever given music notes they can play. Once they learn to put their fingers on the holes accurately, they practice to gain fluency. And that's what, so learning to read music, a little bit like learning to read using phonics. So this is an example of a book. We use a program called Read, Write, Ink, and this here is a picture of one of the phonics books that the children in maybe in grade 1, I think it would be grade equivalent to your grade 1 and kinder read. Read words, we can actually focus reading with. So whichever synthetic you use, you will have books, and the books will link to your sounds. And we need to ensure that children read contains sounds that we know they can read. So there's no point children reading books that contain sounds that we haven't taught them yet, because that's not setting them up for success, because it will be a struggle, because obviously we know the children don't know the sounds yet. By making sure we ensure children read books that match their phonics level means that children know that with only a little bit of help, they will be able to read every word in the story that we give them. And it's also good practice to send the same books home. So when children take the books home, it is a familiar book that they can read. And because that sense of the children knowing that they can read a book, it helps with their self-esteem, it helps with their confidence. Even though the books are easy to read, children will not be able to focus on until they can read the book effortlessly. At earlier stages, children's comprehension is better and they are being read to rather than reading themselves, so exposure is necessary. So you'll find with younger children, if you're sharing a story and you're asking them questions, you will find that their comprehension is a lot stronger because they are listening to you read. You might summarize, you might ask them what's happening, and they just have to focus on listening to you. But when children are reading, younger readers anyway, when they're reading for the first time, reading a book for the first time, they are focusing on decoding. And they are focusing on the words on the page. And they're putting in a lot of effort to read the page. And that's why rereading and children rereading the same books is so important, because that's how they build that fluency and comprehension that we want of them. So we'd never ask, good reading practices, we'd never ask children to guess a word or sound that we have not taught them. If we know we haven't taught a sound, it's more likely that children will not know the sound. So asking them, oh, what do you think this word says? So if we take the word fish in the example you can see in front of you, we haven't taught the special friend shh. So they will probably say is. So they might say fish, when instead it should be ish. If we know we haven't taught that sh sound, just tell them it's sh, ish, fish. So it's better to tell them rather than asking them to guess. Now, what I'll do is we'll talk a little bit about reading strategies. And these are strategies that I think whichever synthetics phonics program you use, you can build. As all you need are reading books. So whether that's like your whatever phonics program you're using and the books that children take home, or whatever your core texts are. So one of the way, what I find with a lot of the synthetic phonics program is that the books, when you read the stories, they're quite bland and they just become quite repetitive. So what I always do is I start with a story introduction. And even though they know it's a phonics book that they are reading, the purpose of the story introduction is to make it really exciting and to find out what is going to happen in the story. So good practice for us as teachers, it would be obviously read the book before, pick out key vocabulary. It draws children into the story. It explains the plot. So we would explain the plot without the ending and build background to enable children to comprehend the story. And that's the purpose of a story introduction. We would also look through the book, check for vocabulary and phrases that we think that the children will not understand. And we use the story introduction to highlight this. So when children are reading the story, they can relate back to the grand story introduction that we give them. So like I said, it's always good practice for children to read the same book multiple times. So what I always do is the children have 3 reads, and the 3 reads are on 3 different days. So the first read for the children, and the purpose is to help our partners read every word in the story. So it's very important that to highlight, which I should have said, is whenever we do reading in my class, I always partner the children up. So it's always paired reading. Children are never reading independently. And the first read is when the children read the storybook for the first time. And for that first read, children must focus on reading the words rather than thinking about the story. So the whole purpose of this is children are reading for accuracy. We're not looking for intonation. We're not looking for fluency. We're not looking for comprehension in that first read. We are simply looking for children to read the words accurately on the page. So now moving on, another all the time, and it's actually probably one of my favorites, and it's this strategy. It really helps me know which children are paying attention in the classroom and which children have been lost. And this I use this as like a game with the children in my class. It's called Jump In, and the whole point of Jump In is to prepare us to read the story with greater fluency. So Jump In is a strategy that helps children build that fluency that we want. So Jump In, the way in which it works is, sorry, I'll just move that. The way in which it works is the teacher reads a page from the book, from whatever our class book is, and they pause at different points, and the children have to jump in at the pause. So we read aloud at a pace that is fast enough to keep the pace flowing and slow enough for children to run their finger or lolly stick, whatever you use, underneath each word. So I'll model this to you so you can understand what Jump In actually is. Sit, sing, and then children would say, because I pause, clap, and they all say at once. With a fish in the pause, the children will jump in at that pause and say, your lap. And obviously, if there'll be more words on the page. So that's what the Jump In strategy is. Now, the second read for the children, and the purpose for the second read is to read the story more speedily without decoding. So in that first read, children will be using their decoding skills. The first time they've read the story, they're reading the story, so they will heavily rely on their decoding skills. But now at this second read, the text is more familiar to the children, so they would start reading it a lot more speedily, and they'll know a lot of the words. And what we as teachers want to look for at this point is that the children rely less on decoding and more on reading speedily. I'll model that with the same page for you. So I'll model what a first read would look like, and then I'll compare it to a second read. So first read, it might be sit, sing, and clap with a fish in your lap. So that's what a first read might look like. Second read might look like this: sit, sing, and clap with a fish in your lap. So you can see there's less decoding out loud, and it might be children decoding in their head and then saying the words. So there might be longer pauses. Now moving on to the third read. And the third read is for the children. The purpose of it is to read the story in a storyteller's voice. So we've got, I'll do the same example. We've got sit, sing, and clap with a fish in your lap. So really showing that intonation. There's an exclamation mark at the end of that sentence. So really reading with expression. So I am going to open the floor out to any questions that anybody has. And so I'm going to end with this quote. It's probably one of my favorite. You're never too old, too wacky, too wild to pick up a book and read to a child. So I am someone that is very passionate about teaching reading, and reading is not only a life skill, but it is a life skill. And when children love to read, you will see that it immerses them in great writing opportunities, and they're successful in lots of different areas of the curriculum. So I hope that's lots of talking done by me, and I know there's lots of us here. So if anybody wanted to ask questions, please, please do so.
Well, I found the advices that you gave us very interesting. Some of the things that I do to engage them more into reading is that I sometimes change the voices of the characters. For example, like if there's a girl, I make the voice of girl. If there's a boy, I make the voice of a boy, and that will engage them more in the reading.
Exactly, yeah. And another, what I completely agree, like really stepping into the character's shoes helps children understand what is actually happening. Another way we can think about it when we're thinking about building comprehension, I call it freeze frames. So the character on this page, the character is, this is me thinking out loud, the character is disappointed because their socks are wet. Show me how they're feeling, and then I get them to do a freeze frame of the different emotions that the character might be feeling at that time. So freeze frames are also a good way of checking comprehension as well. Yeah, I've got someone that's raised their hand. Please feel free to unmute yourself. I think it's Ronaldo. Sorry, I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Okay, can you hear me? Very good.
Yep, I can hear you
Okay.
fine.
My name is Reinaldo Rodriguez from the branch of Costa Verde. Last year, I had a very, very wonderful experience with my students of first grade. I only had 5 students. But let me tell you something. I was listening to you, and I want to congratulate you because the information that I just heard is very, very, very crucial for us to know. And I put into practice a lot of the things that that you just mentioned. But I had a student that it was a very special case for me. And it was the student know how to speak English very well, but in the part of decoding, he was struggling. And I was trying to focus in the phonics and letter in the same way that you are doing it, like
Yeah.
t. And by the way, I dedicate a special time with him because I use this web that is called Starfall. I don't know if you know it.
No,
Starfall.
okay,
Yeah,
I'll look into it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
starfall.com. And they have everything, It's not
Yeah.
it's not of Cambridge, but it is very, very useful. But I really want to know, what can I do if a student is trying to memorize, the letters, but when I send them to read it again or the next day, he doesn't remember how to read it. I had that little problem with this boy, but I help him a lot. And I really want to know, how can I help a student that is um trying to memorize the letters, and sometimes he read because he see the picture, right?
Yeah.
For example, if
I know exactly what you're saying because I have that every year. So like I said, like I usually teach in grade ones, and here in London we call it year 1 and 2. So it's the similar age ranges to what the teachers that are here today. And I completely understand what you're saying because year in and year out, I have the same children in my class. So what's really important, sorry, have you finished? I don't want to cut you halfway. Have you? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I find is multiple exposure. So making sure whatever your school synthetic phonics program is, whether that's floppy phonics or whatever your phonics program at your school is, stick to that. And the way that you as a school teach phonics and teach individual sounds, you stick to that. Like we said earlier on, some children need multiple exposure. If we think about a reading lesson, so if I give you my example, I teach reading with phonics 1 hour a day, and we have small phonics groups. However, for some children, like the children that you're talking about, is a child that you're talking about, that alone is not enough for them. So what I do is I find like online clips that I send home. So whatever the children learn at school, they practice the same sound at home each evening corresponding to that day. Then in addition to that, what I do is either me or the additional member of staff that I have in class with me will do like phonics tutoring with the child, 1-to-1, not long, 5 minutes, where we're teaching that same sound. And when we work with them every day for 5 minutes for that phonics tutoring, we always review the sound that we've taught the day before. And there's a strategy. So when children find decoding difficult, so reading like we might start with CVC words, but if like I gave the example of sat, so they can see it's sat, but they can't put it together and read the word sat. So what I would do is have individual, like have it as cards. So have the SAT as card and make it like into a word game. And so you're mixing up the SAT and you're orally blending. So you're first getting the child to say, so you're saying the sounds at, 3-second pause, seeing if the child can say at, sat. If they can't, then you do my turn, your turn. At, sat, so that you repeat it, and then using cards, you've got the same word. So if it's SAT, you make it as like it's a fun little game for them, and they have to put the sounds in order. So if you might have T, A, and S, so you're modeling it at, and then putting your finger underneath each sound, so like a sound button, at, and then you go sat, mix it up again, and seeing if the child can do it themselves independently. And then you do another word. And that's what I found with a lot of my children. Like I said, at the moment in my class, I have 8 children with special educational needs and 6 of them complex, and they have now all learned how to read. And obviously progress looks different, but it's just constant repetition. So that side-by-side, one-to-one tutoring, that's really helped. And it's not a quick fix. I'm lucky that I've taught the same class now. Like I said, I'm currently teaching year 2, but I taught my current class in year 1, and I took them up to the next academic year. So I've been able to maintain that progress with them. But I feel the more exposure you do with them, and the more you expose them to the sounds, they'll have that light bulb moment where you'll find one day the children can just blend. And that's the best feeling, I think, as teachers, when we found that, yes, the children in our class can read. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's all right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else? This is the first time where I've done online training to this many participants. So it would be great to have some feedback on anything that you found helpful, anything you think can be improved further for next time, because I think I've got the same set of teachers on Thursday for a writing session. So anything that's worked well, anything you feel that can be better, I'm open to any feedback you may have. You can type it in the chat if you don't want to unmute, or if there's any questions you want to ask, you can type it in the chat, and I can leave you with my email address. And I think one of the key takeaways as us teachers is to collaborate with one another, and to have this network like on an international level, I think is something that would be beneficial for all of us. I haven't put my email on the PowerPoint, but it's my name, SHAMIM_P@hotmail.co.uk. So if you want any further support or ideas, I'd be more than happy to collaborate, or even like our classes maybe working together. That would be great. So yeah, thank you. Amazing. Yeah, and I think thank you, Valerie. And I think that's basically what I wanted out of this session, is because I know I've sat in lots of training sessions, and it's like one of the things that I always wish for is practical strategies that I can then take into the classroom. So thank you for really picking up on that, because that's one of the things that I really wanted to highlight. Anything else? Here I'll put my email address on the chat, in the chat. If you wanted to take it, like I said, if you ever want any resources, I will send a copy of this PowerPoint to the admin team, and they can share it out with you if that's helpful. Yeah. In that case, that's it from me, and I hope to see you on Thursday for a writing session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.